Today we're going to be making gradients, so these transitions using acrylic paint. We're going to go from one color and slowly blend into another color. And that's really important for when we want to render things, when we want all of these transitional areas, highlights to midtones to core shadows. So I'm going to show you how to do this. We need our normal acrylic supplies, so paint, palette paper, paper towel, paint brushes, and water cups. As far as paint brushes go, to make these flat kind of wider bands that we're going to attempt to make, we want a flat and wider brush. Try to avoid the round ones. You can blend using these, but these are good for smaller areas, and when we're practicing kind of bigger, we're going to use bigger, flatter brushes. So to start out with, we're going to grab a scrap sheet of paper to paint on top of. And then if you want to put your gradients directly on here, you can. I have a bunch of strips with me. So these are already pre-cut and easy for me to deal with. So I'm just going to paint on that. So have something behind you so that you don't paint on your desk directly. But that should be good for us. The only problem with the strips is that we don't want to paint the ends of them because they tend to curl up. Now to make our gradients look nice, admittedly, mixing in a little bit of white with our colors is going to make them more opaque and prettier. See-through is harder to deal with. So we want to mitigate that. So I'm going to add a little bit of white. If you have a palette knife, you can use that. So I'm going to scoot this over so you can see. First, I'm going to add a little bit of white to the blue, and I'm just going to mix it. It really doesn't matter what colors you end up blending together. You want them to be different enough that you notice the transitions. And again, when I use my knife, I try to use the tip part for the blending. Make sure that I'm scraping all the bottom out. And then I don't particularly care that there's blue on this, but if you want to use your paper towel to clean off, then you can use your paper towel to roughly clean that off. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of white to my magenta. You can use your own colors. It really doesn't matter. It's your own gradients. So sometimes when I'm just practicing, I'll use whatever leftover paint that I have to practice with this. So you want two separate piles and you want a decent amount of paint to practice with today. Again, to keep things clean, I want to wipe that away before it dries. So you don't have to use a palette knife if you want to mix things with your brush. It's just a little bit faster, a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to grab this strip and not paint all the way at the edge because then it tends to curl up. So I'm going to scoot it more towards the center over here. I'll have a lot, so I'll just break off pieces as I need to. I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and to make good gradients, what you need is a lot of paint, basically, not so much, but you're going to have to get kind of accustomed to how much paint you need, and that's just something that comes with practice. So we want a decent amount of paint on here. Notice that I'm just painting a rectangle, basically. Then I'm going to quickly wipe off my brush, rinse it off. Again, all that happens fast. The slower you are, probably the more paint that you need. I'm going to grab my second color and I'm going to put it right next to it over here. A smaller kind of rectangle. And while these are still wet, I'm going to swish kind of back and forth and pull that back and forth. Now I'm going to just go straight down, 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 and pull that paint. So you can see that that creates a nice blend in the center. My paintbrush has a lot of blue on it now. If there's too much paint on your brush, you can wipe it. There's not on mine. I'm lightly gonna go the other direction and back and forth. Now over here, I went a little far. I'll wipe it off, grab my original color, and just try to go in while it's still wet again. Press a little bit harder so that they're blending together. And so a lot of this is based on like instincts that you build the more you do it. So please don't be frustrated if your first one doesn't look nice. I'm gonna tear this off and try again. it doesn't really matter what color you start out with. Typically when I'm doing acrylic paint, I start with a lighter color, blend in a darker color, but you can go either way once you're blending. It's blending into where you should start light. On a typical painting, it doesn't matter in acrylic because you can just paint on top of things. So this time I'll start the opposite. I get my pink color again. I'm not going to go all the way to the edge. I want a decently thick amount of paint. I'm going to wipe that off. So get off as much as you can. Again, if you're not very quick, then just a little bit more paint to accommodate for that. Clean that off, dry it nicely, and then grab my second color. I'm not going to make a bar that's this big, but just kind of right up here, right next to it, I'm going to start pushing so that those colors blend together. And then I lighten up the pressure over here and I start going back. So you see me going back and forth, and now I'm going kind of in a scrubbing motion. Okay, so that's how you make gradients. I'm sorry if I make it look like it's easy, it's not. Now, let's pretend that there were like 3 colors that I wanted to do, or if I wanted to do these 2 but like extend it more. You can mix the in-between colors already. So if I take some of this pink and I take some of this blue and I pre-mix it together, that's going to help me with my transitions. So some people like to make more in-between colors to help them. I personally think it's a little bit harder to do this, but I can see the appeal of it for way bigger areas. So for this, same thing, you can start with your color, whatever color you want to. This is the middle shade, or the middle color. But again, it needs a lot of paint. So I'm going to mix my blue. It's good to practice so that you know how. Then right next to it, I'm going to get a good amount of this in-between purple color. Like I said, this is for kind of bigger areas. And I can see that I'm like scraping right there. There's not enough paint. So I'm going to put some more down. And then last, I'm going to grab my pink color. Careful with how much water you're getting. Sometimes that affects the paint. And put that down. Okay, so now while all 3 of them are still wet, quickly I'm going to press down, 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 and I'm going to try to press kind of harder over here where they meet. Go back and forth. Then over here where it's just straight up purple, I don't have to press very hard at all. I'm going to wipe off any excess paint, and I'm going to bring this over to the blue. And back and forth. And so we get and achieve a much wider band of color by mixing those 3. And you can mix any colors you want to. This didn't have to be a transitional area, but it does look like it goes from pink to purple to blue, like they've all mixed together. But you could also put yellow in the middle, make a rainbow. That's totally fine too. So that is how you make gradients. When you are ready and these are totally dry, you're going to cut off the ends of them so they're neat. Save your best 3 and you're going to paste them onto a separate sheet of paper. So let's save those aside and see part 2 for how we do a sphere.